to the Love Lab Podcast, a safe place to get real about sex. Whether you're a man, woman, single, or couple, this is the show for you.
We are your hosts, Kevin Anthony and Celine Remy, and we are here to guide you to go from good to amazing in the bedroom and beyond.
All right, welcome back to the Love Lab Podcast. This is episode 267, and it is titled How to Finally Live Happily Ever After with Justin and Cresta. So what are we talking about here? Obviously, everybody's heard live happily ever after. Most people, I think, these days assume that it's just a cheesy Disney line that doesn't actually exist. Granted, I did not have the opportunity with my wife to live the rest of our lives, but I can tell you that the time we did spend together all those years, we're very happily ever after, and I know that it is possible. And I have some guests on the show today who also are living this, and I think they are going to be able to give us a really good idea of how we can create this in our lives, because it is absolutely possible. You can live a long, happily married life. It doesn't have to get boring. It doesn't have to get stale. It doesn't have to become cohabitation or co-parenting or any of the things that it often becomes for people. So then the question is, how do we get there? And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before we get there, a short word from our sponsor. Power and Mastery 3.0 is here. The men's sexual mastery program you have heard about on this show for a long time is now even better. I have personally reviewed every module, lesson, video, audio, and PDF to see if there is anything new that needed to be added. As a result, I have added 10 new videos, 1 new audio, 8 new PDFs, and dozens of links to handpicked products to help support your journey to mastery. In addition, there is also a brand new user interface that makes it easier to navigate the course and find your course materials. So if you're ready to become the sexual master you have always wanted to be, then go now to powerandmastery.com. That is powerandmastery.com. Okay, so Justin and Cresta are certified coaches whose mission is to help couples who are struggling with intimacy and communication in all areas of the relationship, but are both looking for and longing for a deep connection. So welcome, Justin and Cresta, to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
We're excited to be here.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I like in your bio, you mentioned that you work with couples who are struggling with intimacy and communication, but that they are actually looking for a deep connection or a good relationship. And that's something that my wife and I always specialized in too. In other words, like we didn't specialize in working with the couples that were on the verge of like divorce and breakup. Right. We specialized in helping people like they love each other, they want to be together, but they can't figure out how to make it work or how to get to the place they want to get to. And so I think that's a beautiful place to be as far as being able to help people, because there's so many people in that niche that you're addressing.
Yeah, there are. With marriages, so often there's so many things that pop up that kind of derail you from that original intent when you got married. Because when you got married, you had that honeymoon phase and everything was new and exciting. And then, you get that promotion. Life happens. Yeah. You get that promotion at work. You start having kids, and all of a sudden you feel like your roommates just raising 2 kids, but you still love that person that you're sitting across the dinner table from. You love them. You just don't know how to connect because your life has taken on so many new challenges, so many new facets that you just don't know where to turn. And it's not that those couples are wanting out. It's how do we move this thing forward to get to where we were before?
Or move it back.
Yeah. And so that's really what we like focusing on.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like I said, there's so many people in that space that could really use that work. So it's great that you're out there doing that. So my first question is kind of an extension of what we were just talking about, which is, okay, what does it actually mean to live happily ever after? Because everybody's got this, like I said in the intro, this like Disney idea of what it means, right? Like, right. What does it actually mean?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One thing that we really emphasize when we're talking to couples who are ready to join the program is it's going to take work. It's not
a lot of work.
A lot of work sometimes. Yeah.
It's more work than not.
Yeah. And so, but it takes work because you've got to work on yourself. You got to start focusing on yourself and get yourself in a place where you're able to move forward as well. So we do a lot of work with couples individually as well. Like I'll work with the men, she'll work with the women. But that happily ever after is getting to a point where you understand one another, you have a deep connection, and you're really becoming best friends again. And I know that term is kind of overused a lot today, but just really understanding each other on an intimate level so that I'm able to respond to Cresta's needs when she's down. She's able to respond to my needs when I'm down. And we're there for each other.
And that happens naturally. It's not, hey, I'm down, you need to pick me up.
Right.
It's just a natural, you feel it, and you naturally pick each other up without having to ask.
Yeah, and it's having that partner with you. So often, especially when you start raising kids, maybe the mother's doing the bulk of the work of raising the kids, and the dad just kind of works, comes home, and sits down. Well, that's not a happily ever after for the wife. She's doing a lot of the work, and so how do we get parents to be parents together? How do we get them to be partners together in life, in every aspect of that? And really, once you start working on everything together, it doesn't matter what kind of challenges life throws at you. Like, you're enjoying working on this because you're now a cohesive team working together to accomplish your goals.
And everything is happier that way.
It is.
Indeed. I love that you used the word team. That is a word that my wife and I used all the time. We used to call ourselves Team Us. The us had two meanings, obviously us, but also it was an acronym that stood for something else. But the point is we always saw the relationship as absolutely a team.
Yeah.
And in a
100%.
team, you work together for a common goal.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. When Cresta and I sit down and, just taking finance, because that's something real big that a lot of couples struggle with, is I come at it from a different perspective than she comes at it because we were raised different. And so she has a different perspective of money than I do. And so when we come together, as long as we have our goals laid out where we're headed, she can bring a different set of values to the finances that I bring in. I don't look at those as negative. I look at those as picking myself up where I'm weak, and where she lacks, I'm picking her up where she's weak. And really, that's how a team operates,
and vice versa.
And vice versa. Yeah, absolutely. And so, when we sit down and we're looking at our common goals, we attack it as a team. And are there sometimes some, disagreements where we got to work together? Absolutely. We're two humans coming together from different perspectives, but we understand the goal. And so we're working together for those goals. And that's really how we approach everything in life.
Absolutely. Everything we do is approached with that two-sided to one-sided. It's we come together. It's not my stuff and his stuff. It's our stuff.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be if you're really dedicated to being a couple. Okay, so we have an idea of what happily ever after means. It means really working together. It means connecting. It means sharing a life where you are still attracted to your partner, still happy to be with them, still maintaining a healthy sex life, and all of that stuff throughout the entire length of that relationship, whether it's 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever, right? That's what we mean when we say happily ever after.
Yep.
So then my next question is, what's the biggest struggle that you see couples dealing with? Like, what's the main thing that gets them off that course to happily ever after?
I would say it's how they were raised in this concept of family of origin that we talk about with couples, because you've got couples that were raised to deal with situations a certain way. And so, one couple might come in where everything was dealt with arguing, and I don't want to say arguing in a negative way, but very loud and boisterous. Then you've got another couple that are another person in that relationship that comes at it with a very meek attitude, where maybe it wasn't dealt with, it was swept under the rug, or when it was dealt with, it was dealt with very lightly, quietly. And so what we have found is a lot of couples just are attacking problems at two different angles. And so if we can really get couples to understand where their partner's coming from and understand why their partner is reacting the way they are or communicating the way they're communicating, we have found that that gets them past a lot of problems, because again, we're working with couples that want to be there. They want to be with each other. They've lost that ability to sometimes communicate, sometimes be in the same room together, but just really working together. And so if they can understand that when, the husband is being loud and boisterous, he's not being mean and aggressive. That's how he was raised. That's how his parents dealt with issues. And so if we get the wife to understand that, then she starts to find her voice a little bit. Okay, so he's not being mean and aggressive. He's not mad. That's just how he's communicating.
Usually we can end up getting him to a happy medium where it's a middle tone discussion instead of either a loud one or a quiet one. It's adjusting both people to center, or understanding in this case.
Yeah, so I like this idea of family of origin, because I think what it's speaking to here is something that we are seeing so much in our society these days, which is people almost living in two separate realities, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, one person grew up with learning from their primary role models one way of communicating, expressing their emotions, showing up in a relationship, that they think like that's their reality. This is how you operate in a relationship, right?
This is how every relationship operates.
Right, that as well, right? And then you've got the other person going, well, no, that's not how you do it. This is how you do it, because they learned it this way from their primary role models. And so both of them are thinking they're right, and both of them are thinking the other person is wrong.
Yes.
And
Right.
how do you get them both to see that they're both attempting to get to the same outcome, the same goal, but just from two different places? And so I
Right.
guess that would be kind of my next question, which is when you're working with couples and you see that they have really just two different ways of operating in a relationship, how do you begin to start to bring them closer together so that they're sort of operating from the same playbook, so to speak? Like they're starting to communicate in ways that they can hear. They're starting to understand each other. Like, oh, that was from his dad, or that was from her mom, or whatever.
So one of the best ways to do that is to do a session together. So Cresta and I, and then the other couple, and then have the husband talk about, how did your parents communicate when you were a kid? And have the wife listen to that, and have the wife take notes. And then switch it up. Have the wife talk about how her parents communicated. Have the husband take notes. And then what you do at that point is you ask the wife and the husband, is this how she tries to communicate to you, or is this the areas that you feel are lacking in your communication because she's doing this? And usually right then they start to understand, okay, yes, she's communicating just like her mom or just like her father. He's communicating just like one of his parents. And so right there, we find a piece of common ground saying, okay, so he is trying to communicate to you. It may not be coming across to you. You may not be hearing it, but he is trying. So can we agree that each one of you is trying to communicate? Like, you guys are trying to work on this. We're just at a miss somewhere. And usually at that point, most of the couples, I would say, will then agree that, okay, so we are trying to communicate to each other. There's a miss. And if you can get them to understand that there's a miss somewhere, again, they're wanting to work on this. They're wanting to fix it. And so now they can start coming together and start adjusting to how they're communicating. And so, we have a few exercises we do where, maybe the wife's a little meek. And so what is uncomfortable for you to say in this last argument you have? Well, I wanted to tell him, A, B, and C. Okay, so go ahead and tell him that, because he wants to hear that. That's what he's trying to get from you, but you're not communicating it. And then obviously and again, we're using loud and boisterous. Like, there's a lot of different areas that family of origin fall in. Those are just kind of the easiest ones to understand. But the loud one, okay, maybe slow down a little bit. Don't get so excited. Don't get so emotional when you're having a conversation, because that's kind of overloading her sensors.
Intimidating.
And it's being a little intimidating. So let's lower that down a little bit and start communicating that way. And then, we let them go for a week. And how did that work? Did you have any arguments? And usually the couples will start to find a happy medium. We've seen an example where, the happy medium was not where we would have put it. You know, both couples became a little more vocal and a little more, I don't want to say aggressive because that's not the right word, just more loud in their arguments. So the meek
More
person,
outspoken.
more outspoken, yes. And so it wasn't where we would have placed it, but it worked for them. And so I think as coaches, that's one of the hard things is when a couple finds out something that's working for them and it's like, ah, man, that's kind of outside where I would like you to be, but it's working for you guys. So that's kind of how we start that process. And again, that takes a couple weeks. That's not something that we'll have one session with a couple and say, okay, you guys are good. Let's move on to the next thing. That's something we like to really work on, because we have found that once we get that kind of set, everything else just starts to snowball.
Right.
So I heard you use the examples of both men and women having difficulty communicating with each other. I'm curious, from your perspective, do you see men struggling more to communicate their needs, their wants with women, or do you see women, or is it kind of even?
It's pretty even. It's kind of a shocking answer. A lot of people would not expect to hear that. But it is pretty even. Women have a lot more difficulty expressing than men think that they do.
Yeah.
To get things across, because there is that intimidation where, you know, am I what I'm about to say is, are they going to take it right?
Yeah, and I think some of that comes from, and I think you've probably seen this working with men too. Men become pouty. Men become very whiny when they don't get what they want, and sometimes they become. That's the best way I know how to explain it. Is almost childish, and they're trying to communicate. And granted, they are doing it wrong. They need to find a different way to communicate, but they're trying to communicate. So, you know, the best example I think of is when a guy doesn't get sex, he becomes whiny and pouty, and like, you know, it's always this way. And what we try to do is kind of take them out of their situation and have a 30,000 foot overview. Okay, you didn't get sex tonight, but you're saying you never get sex. When was the last time you had sex? Well, it was 4 or 5 days ago. Okay, so let's take the never out of that statement. You're not getting sex tonight. Is it the end of the world? No. Okay. You know, and obviously there's some things we need to work on both sides in a situation like that. But, you know, and so we try to get the whininess and the complaining out of men because they are trying to communicate. It's just, it's not working. They're communicating the wrong way.
Right.
So that's why I say men do try to communicate. It's just, they're going about it the wrong way.
Got it. So in your experience, then what you're saying is women are more concerned about whether or not their communication is going to be received correctly, and they may be intimidated by, you know, the reaction that he's going to have to what she has to communicate. Whereas on the other end, men tend to maybe shut down a little bit more and or not really know how to actually express what it is they want to say. Does that sound?
That would be accurate. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So of course that begs a couple more questions, right? Which is, and we'll start from the women's side first. What is it, would you say, Cresta, a woman needs in order to be able to communicate more effectively with her man?
It's going to start with him hearing her. Like he has to give some kind of indication that he's actually listening to what she's saying. That's where it's going to start, because if she can see that he's hearing what she's saying, then she's going to be more open to that communication and do it more often, and probably learn easier how to work with his communication versus against it, so they're not butting heads. It's cohesive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about a feeling of safety for her?
Oh, safety is everything in a marriage.
Yes.
That's one of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on, or I pride my relationship on, is that feeling of safety. I had never been in a relationship with anybody where I actually felt safe, and the feeling of safety. If I say this and it comes out wrong, he's not going to blow up on me. Mm-hmm. So that's okay that I say it, because I'm at least communicating what I need to communicate.
Yeah. So guys who are listening to this show, what she just said is basically two things. Number one, you have to make her feel safe that she can communicate what she needs to communicate, right? And number
Yes.
two, you have to show that you're actually paying attention to what
Yes.
she's saying. You could do those things. Suddenly you will see that her communication improves significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So let's flip it around now, and let's talk about the men. So we're talking about how the men really struggle to express the things that they want to express. What do the men need, or how can they get better at expressing what they need to in a given moment?
I think the best advice I ever received was tell your wife what you're actually feeling. So if you're approaching, and this is something a lot of men can relate to, if you're approaching the topic of sex and you want to have sex and she denies you, and it becomes a issue you're going through consistently, tell her how that makes you feel. Hey, this makes me feel emasculated. This makes me feel childish that I have to come and ask you for this. Tell her exactly how you're feeling, because so often men don't communicate exactly what they're feeling. We communicate with our emotions, and we get pouty, or we get mad, or we get frustrated, and we don't communicate with our words. So communicate with your words what she's doing makes you feel, because so often they don't know that, and as soon as they know that, they're like, oh shoot, I didn't realize that's what I was doing to you. I didn't realize I was making you feel this way. So the first thing is communicate with your words exactly how it makes you feel. The second is, if your wife comes to you with a problem, with something that irritates you, still make her feel safe to bring that to you. Don't get upset. Don't be overly
Lash out
or anything like that. Like, she's got to feel that she can bring you anything at any time, and you're going to be that rock and that pillar that's not going to overreact to the situation. Are there times that you need to react quickly to things? Absolutely, but you don't need to overreact to a situation.
Well, and I think one thing that I can recommend to everybody with communication is, and he just said, talking about reacting quickly, communication, slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down your thought process and your mouth.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
always
that
good
helps.
advice.
They always you always hear think before you speak, but it's so helpful to actually do that, because you can say, and Justin said things to me where I'm like, did you just seriously say that to me? He's like, wait, what did I just say? and if you can slow down and think about what you say before you say it, you can maybe prevent some kind of a little bit of hurt just by considering the tone that's about to come out of your mouth, or the words.
Yes.
So slow down is my best communication tip.
Yeah. There's been more than there should, I guess you could say, where I've used the wrong word to describe something about Cresta, and she's like, did you really just call me this? I think we were talking about, I forget the context, and I called her a hussy, and she's like, did you really just call me that? And I meant to say lush when we were joking around, like not huss, like just the wrong words came out. But her ability to stop the conversation and say, is this really what you meant to call me? And it's like, no, that's not what I meant at all. Instead of getting mad and upset and starting a potential argument, she was able to slow that conversation down and say, okay, is this really what you meant? And I was able to think, oh no, okay, I misspoke. That's not the word I intended on using.
Always great advice. Slow down and think before you speak, and definitely don't react out of emotion, right? Those emotional reactions, because they rarely ever lead to anything good in a discussion.
That's true. Absolutely.
But I like what you also said, from the man's point of view, and it's just a point I sort of want to reiterate, which is that, as men, we're taught not to really be in touch with or feel our emotions, right? And so we learn to sort of suppress that and not really talk about it and not really deal with it. But women, on the other hand, are all about emotions. And so what I was hearing you say is like, hey, if you can, first of all, communicate, use your words, and second of all, communicate how emotionally that makes you feel, that's something that she'll be able to understand on the other side. She'll go, oh yeah, I know that emotion. I can understand that, right? That's not necessarily always going to be an easy thing for us men, because it's not something that we have really practiced or learned. But whether it's an emotion or it's simply the reason, like for instance, you know, you use the example of wanting sex, and I think if a woman truly understood why sex was important to him
Hmm.
as a man, that would help her understand a whole lot more rather than just, I just need sex. I just need sex. Like, how come I'm not getting sex? Because I need sex. And she's like, well, big deal. I need lots of stuff I don't have, right? You know?
Right.
See, and there's what you just said is key. She needs the emotional. So if he can support her emotionally, she's going to naturally support him more physically.
Yeah.
We talk about how we improve intimacy inside and outside of the bedroom, and they correlate so much.
They do.
The more intimacy you have outside of the bedroom, the more intimacy you're going to have inside of the bedroom.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is absolutely true. And that's one of the things that, you know, my wife and I used to say all the time, because we focused a lot in the work that we do on the sexuality piece of people's relationships. And so, you know, we used to say all the time that, you know, foreplay starts long before you ever get into the bedroom.
Yes. Yes.
It does.
That is
It
so
does.
true. Yeah. You know, and it's the simple things that men can do. You know, it's making sure your wife never has to take out the trash. It's, you know,
Texting her randomly just to
Texting her
say hi
random.
and I'm thinking about you.
yeah, just 2 seconds. You know, it's doing those little things throughout the day that makes her feel like she's thought about, that she's cared for, that, you know, you're doing these things because you love her, not because, you know, she has asked you to do it. How many, and every guy can relate to this, how many times has your wife asked you to do something that you probably could have done before she asked you? Like take out the trash, do the dishes, unload the dishwasher, like little things like that. Start being a little bit more proactive in those things, and watch how it really translates to the bedroom. Because all of a sudden, what you're really doing is taking some burden off her, taking some responsibility off her, and now she's, whether you like to admit it or not, now she's not as tired when it's time to go to bed. She's a little less stressed because her mind isn't thinking about all these other things.
And
You've
she's
taken
not
so
thinking
much
about the
off her.
trash.
Yeah, she's not thinking about the trash. Yes.
You are
Um,
absolutely right, and I love that you guys are bringing this up, because listeners who've been listening to this show for a long time have heard myself and my wife and I, when we did the show together, say this exact thing over and over again. But what I love is when we have other examples of successful couples come on here and tell you that this is the secret to their
This is.
success. Like, I think listeners, if you hear it enough times, it might start to sink in.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, you're absolutely right. When it comes to sex, you know, my wife used to say all the time, she's like, you know, women have this ability to be, that she used to call it diffuse awareness. She's like, we can think of a million things at one time. Yeah, that's
Yes.
great when you're a mom and you have a million things that have to happen. But when you get into the bedroom, the last thing you want to be doing is thinking of a million things. And
Right.
so, just like you both just said, one thing, just one simple thing that you can do as a guy to get her out of her head and into her body is to help her take care of a few of those things. The trash
Yes.
is out, done, right?
Yes.
Yep.
The kids are taking care of their sleep, done, right?
Yes.
She can check all that stuff off her list. It's absolutely great advice.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and Cresta and I didn't raise kids together. I had my kids before we got together, but, you know, especially like giving Cresta just some time, like right now she's going through chemotherapy and things like that, and giving her some time just to go and relax, you know, not breathing down her neck every second of the day. Like, hey, why don't you go take a bath? I know you're in a little bit of pain right now. And giving her the freedom just to go and be by herself and relax really, really changes the whole dynamic sometimes of her mental well-being. Because right now she's going through a lot of pain. And so sometimes she'll get a little tunnel visioned. And if I can escort her kind of out of that for a little bit, like it opens up so many more things. And if men would just see that in their wives, like the kids are driving them crazy. Okay, I'm going to take care of the kids for the next hour and a half. You go take a bath, do what you need to do. I'm taking care of the kids. I'll finish up with their homework. I'll get them to bed. That way you don't have to worry about it. Like those type of things are huge in a mother's or a woman's
Right.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it deepens everything inside, outside, the house, the bedroom.
Yeah.
It makes everything, it's relationship changing to have a man think about those things.
Yeah, and so basically, we're coming back around again to teamwork, right? This is
Yeah,
teamwork, right? When
it
when
is.
one person needs the help, the other person steps in and provides it.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
how it works. Okay, I got to take a short break for sponsor, and then when we come back from that, I want to talk about, because I have a bunch of questions about, right now we've been talking about, how people can really maintain a good relationship, the day-to-day things they can do. But I got a bunch of questions about when things really start to go off the tracks, right? And how we can kind of bring that back around. So that's what I want to get to when we come back from the other side of this break.
Okay.
Okay. Are you a couple? Are your relationship and sex life where you want them to be? Are there changes you would like to make but just don't know how? Maybe you think there is nothing that can be done. I challenge you to make this year the year that changes. If you are not 100% happy with where your relationship or sex life is, then get help today and change your life. Go to kevinandceline.com/sex-coaching-couples. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Link is in the description. Don't worry about it. When you go there, you can schedule a strategy call with me today so we can map out a strategy to help you get you to where you want to be. That is kevinandceline.com/sex-coaching-couples. The link is in the description. And I will also put out there, and of course, I will give you time at the end of the show. If you like and you resonate with Justin and Cresta, who do similar work, then go check them out too. I will give them an opportunity to plug where you can find them at the end of the show. But I'm a big fan of helping people get the help that they need, regardless of who it is. So if you're a listener of the show and you like what I do, go check that out. And at the end, when Justin and Cresta tell you where they can find more about them, go check them out as well. Okay. So we've been talking about, the day-to-day things, how to help out, how to have better communication, how to work together as a team, all that kind of great stuff. And it's all fantastic stuff that every couple should be doing every day. But let's just say you haven't been doing those things. Let's just say your relationship has gone off the tracks. One of the things, Justin, that you and I talked about in the pre-interview, which is definitely something that I have seen as well, and I'm wondering if you could maybe talk about, both of you, of course, is when a relationship gets to the point where a woman decides that she wants to leave, that's generally not a decision that she came to very quickly, is it not?
No, it's usually probably at least a year, if not 2 or 3 years in the making.
And sometimes more.
Yeah, you've got wives a lot of times like to keep things together for the kids, and so they're going to mentally deal with whatever they need to deal with so that they have the best for their kids. And as a culture and society, and it's right, it's best to have that cohesive family, that nucleus. So she's going to try to keep things together as long as possible. But when she reaches that point where she has asked for a divorce, asked you to move out, it's not a spur of the moment thing. It's likely right around 2 years is pretty much the average that she's been thinking about it. And usually at that point, I don't ever want to say it's too late, because it's not too late even at that point, because you can, as a man, go and make the changes you need to make. It's just a lot of work. It's hard work. And the best way to say it is you've almost got to let her go, work on yourself to become the man that she fell in love with, because somewhere down the road, you got off track. The best example I have of this is one of our clients. He was working like 80 hours a week for a company. He was in management, and he was having staffing issues, so he was working all the time. He was covering 2 or 3 jobs, and his wife came to him and she told him, I want you to quit your job. Again, this is where the family of origin and communication come in. That's not really what she was asking of him. She wanted him to find time for the family. Like, I need you here. I need you part of the family. When we got married, this is what I wanted. I need you here with the kids. I need you here with me. You've got to find a balance. Well, he took it literal, so he quit his job. He had something in his back pocket that he was working on, and it wasn't fully fleshed out at that point, but he ended up making it work, but it's not what she wanted. And once we got that couple together to really understand that That's not what she wanted, man. She was wanting you to spend time with your family. She was wanting you to do all these little things that we've talked about. It took a while to get him to turn around because that was a pretty rash decision that he made.
Right, right. And it was a buildup. She had asked him, "Hey, can we spend some time together? Can we spend some time together? Can we spend some time together?"
Yeah.
And then eventually she's like, "You just need to quit your job." You know.
Yeah.
So it's that communication and that slow down and listen to what each other is saying.
Yeah. And that goes back to ask questions. Like if she says quit your job and you think, because he thought that was a pretty rash decision, well, ask her about it. Like, don't just take her
really
word.
Want me to quit my job?
Yeah, like
Right.
have a conversation about it. So obviously that's a pretty extreme example.
It did all work out. I mean, they're doing awesome now.
Right.
Yeah.
But-
And they spend a lot of time together.
A ton of time together now. Like things did work out for them, but when you get to that point, you really got to start focusing in on yourself and working on yourself, because obviously there's something that's gone off the rails on your end that you need to take the time to fix.
Yeah. And so really what I wanted to pull out with that question was understand that these generally are things that have built up over a long period
Yeah.
of time.
Yep.
Right. So one, that means you need to address it right away, because this isn't something new that just happened that at some point, well, it'll work itself out. No, it's been building for a long time. Right.
Yes.
And two, don't expect it to be fixed instantly either, right?
No.
Because this has happened over a long period of time. It's going to take a little while to bring that back. So, I think that is something that a lot of guys don't realize. They think that women tend to operate more like men, where men will just get an impulsive reaction, be like, "That's it, I'm done,"
Yep.
right?
Right. Right.
That's generally not the way it works for most
Nope.
women. Okay, so let's just say a man does realize that this has gone off the rails and that something needs to be done. Another thing that we talked about that we see all the time, and I think needs to be addressed, is this idea of grand gestures to fix everything with one giant amazing gesture, right? We see this in just about every sitcom and rom-com movie ever made, right?
Right.
The guy F's up from beginning to almost the entire end of the movie, right? And then suddenly he swoops in with a grand gesture and everything's all right and they live happily ever after. So my question to you is, does this work? And if it doesn't, what should they actually be doing?
So from the perspective of the man, let's say you've noticed everything going off the rails and you've had the talk that never gets anybody anywhere. Start making the changes you need to make, that you need to make in your life, in your daily habits, but don't tell your wife you're making those changes. Because if you've gotten to that point, how many times, I'm sure you've had multiple talks at that point. It as much as it is a surprise, it's really not a surprise, because you've probably had that conversation a couple times and you've told her, yeah, I'm going to start doing this and I'm going to start doing that. And so she's lost trust in what you say. We, as men, our word is our bond. A lot of times, she's there every morning when you don't wake up at 4:30 in the morning and go to the gym like you told her the night before you were going to do. Like, she's there. She understands who you are. She understands your failures. So my first recommendation is always stop talking and start doing. Don't tell her the changes you're going to make. Just make those changes, because what she's going to do initially is she's going to start questioning those changes. Is he doing this short term? Is this permanent? She's going to have a lot of questions. And if you go to her and you say, hey, I'm going to start doing this, and then you mess up one day, it's another big deal. Whereas if you start making the changes and you mess up one day and you pick yourself back up the next, it's not that big of a deal, because you haven't talked about it. You haven't told her. And just,
it wasn't a broken promise.
It wasn't a broken promise. And we're all human. We're all going to fail sometimes. So as you're getting yourself right, just start doing it yourself.
And to add on to that, it's not big things.
No,
it's the trash.
Yeah.
It's the dishes. It's
giving her time alone.
Tiny little things, the compound effect. If you start doing one small thing today, you do it again tomorrow, eventually it's going to be huge.
Yeah. And from from the man's perspective, start writing the things you're grateful for.
Gratitude journals are amazing.
A gratitude journal. Like, what am I thankful for? And what that's going to do is that's just going to start to change your mindset on, you're not going to start, because a lot of times men do get a little nitpicky on things maybe she does do or doesn't do. And there starts to be this comparison of who's doing what. And if you get into the habit of that gratitude journal, that those comparisons go away and you start doing things because you love her, you care about her, and you understand the value that she adds to your family. And, like you said, it's not going to happen overnight. And if you expect it to happen overnight, you're living in a fantasy world. Like it's going to take some time because you've got to rebuild that trust. You've got to rebuild that connection. You've got to rebuild everything. But understand that it does work. It just takes time.
And you have to remember to drop the competition.
Yeah.
A relationship is not a competition. Well, I took the trash out last time and I took the trash out the 3 times before that and he hasn't taken it out at all. And, that's just going to make issues worse.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Cresta, I want to just follow up with you on the grand gestures versus the little things. I'm curious and I don't know if you've experienced this before, you likely have, but like, if a man comes to you with this grand gesture, like what's the first thing that goes through your mind? Like, are you like, oh my God, this is amazing? Or are you like, yeah, good luck with that? Like, what goes through your mind as a woman when a man shows up and tries to fix everything with some grand gesture?
It's kind of a temporary high. Like, oh, that's so nice. That's going to be so awesome. We're going to go on this big vacation and everything's going to be good. And then as soon as it sets in, you realize that it's not a fix. It's not even a Band-Aid, really. So it's a temporary, very short-lived high of, oh, he's doing this for me. Whereas the little things, I would rather have him take the trash out than some big grand gesture. Help with the dishes, those little things on the daily basis. I like to be thought of daily, not once every 6 months for vacation.
Do you find that when you get the big initial high from the grand gesture, that there's also an associated low afterwards? Like not
Absolutely.
even just back to normal, but like, they do
even
the
lower.
big, yeah, even lower. Right. So that's something you've experienced?
I've had a lot of, I was never married before, Justin. And I had a lot of
horrible,
unhealthy relationships. So there were never any grand gestures before. But there's the low is because you're coming back to, you go on this vacation and you come back and that even lower is like, well, this was supposed to fix it. This was supposed to make it better. And it hasn't. So now what? You're instead of being back to a medium spot, you're even lower, and it's going to take even more work to get
it's because the grand gestures don't deal with the root issues,
right?
You're painting over something that needs to be ripped out and redone. We've all had that apartment in our younger days that they threw a fresh coat of paint on and said it's good to go.
Oh yeah, sometimes more than one of those,
right? And you walk in and you're like, yeah, this does look a little better than when I did my initial walkthrough. And then you live there and you're like, this isn't any better at all. This is probably worse now, right? Because there's
mold under the paint.
Yeah, right.
That you can't get rid of.
Yes. And so those grand gestures, those do not fix anything. And if that is your idea of fixing things, then again, you're
going in the wrong direction.
You're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. So I really wanted to spend a little time focusing on that because it is so pervasive in our society, this idea that you can just do that. And I really wanted to drive the point home with your help, of course, for the listeners, that the grand gestures don't work and that it is indeed the little things that seem like they're just stupid and pointless, like taking out the trash. But you do that consistently over time, and those are the things. It's like, yes, you want to talk about ripping stuff out and starting over. It's one nail at a time. Yes. One nail at a time.
Yes.
Right? That's
absolutely.
How you get there. Okay, so we are getting close to the end of the show. I got a couple more questions I want to ask you. So let's just say that a couple does realize that this is going off the rails and something needs to be done, what is the first thing that they should do? Like suddenly they're like, oh crap, this is not working, something needs to be done. What's like your piece of advice for the first thing that they need to do to start getting that train back over towards the tracks?
I'll go from the man's perspective, and again, we've talked a lot about it today. But start doing those little things. Again, without much conversation to your wife, but start taking out the trash. Start, I don't know how most people are, but like go get gas in your wife's car. Like just start doing those little things for her. And if she asks you why you're doing those, you don't really have to explain that, well, I'm trying to fix our relationship, I'm trying to get things better. Don't go that route. Just said, I noticed that I hadn't been taking out the trash. I noticed your car was on empty and I wanted you to have gas. Like explain actually why you would do those things if your marriage was going well. And that way it doesn't feel like a pity party. And then understand that there is going to be some rage or some lash out that may happen because you've done things wrong for so long. There may be the point in time where she's questioning you. And understand, and this is what I like to tell men all the time, understand that there is some anger, some rage or something like that. That is a good sign, because that means she is still emotionally invested in the relationship. It's when she's completely indifferent, I find that's when we have the real issues, is when like there is no emotion at all. No response. But if there is some emotion there, that's a good sign. Let's just keep working on that. I'll let you take it from there.
So as far as like a woman, I would say the first thing she needs to do is take a deep breath and realize that it's okay to ask questions. I'm feeling this. Why? You got to give a chance to feel safe.
Yeah.
And if you can communicate that I want to feel safe with you, then something might click with him. Because a lot of the times they're starting to feel these things at about the same time.
Yeah.
And when he's realizing, she's probably realizing, yeah. And so there's that potential that he's gonna catch on to that and open up to it a little bit better.
Yeah. And one thing I think women need to do if they notice things are going off the rail is pretty much grab your husband by the shoulders and let him know exactly what's going on. Because so often we miss those little cues that they're throwing at us. It's not that we don't want to fix it. And sometimes we even know how to fix it, but we just don't know that there's a problem.
Right.
And the subtle cues sometimes don't work.
Sometimes.
Yes, most of the
subtle
time
hints don't ever work.
Yes. So be honest, be straightforward with him, let him know exactly what's going on, because he wants to fix those issues, but 9 times out of 10 he doesn't know they're there.
That is absolutely so true, that a lot of the time as men, we actually do want to fix things because that's what we do. We're men, we fix things, but we can't fix anything if we don't know there's a problem. And we're definitely, in general, I know a few guys out there in the comments will say, but I do. Yeah, okay, there's outliers to everything. In general, as men, we are not good at picking up these subtle hints.
Correct.
So women, if you can be more direct with us, and don't worry, we're men, we can take it. Just tell us where we're effing up.
Yes.
So we're aware. But do it kindly.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Any last bit of advice for couples, whether it's how to get the train back on the tracks or just how to have a great happily ever after in general? Believe
in it. Believe that it can happen for you. It can happen. You have to be willing to work at it. And be willing to do the work for it.
Yeah. And find somebody to help you. One of the reasons I think a lot of marriages aren't as good as they can be is because there's no training for it. There's no manual on how to do it. So find somebody, find a coach that you click with. And, we're very much of the opinion of you is it doesn't have to be us. It doesn't have to be you. Like, just find somebody you click with, that you resonate with, and get the help you need, because there are a lot of good marriage coaches out there that will help you get things going on the right track. Mm-hmm. And if you have a good marriage, a great marriage helps somebody who doesn't,
And keep getting the help yourself, because there's always going to be a need.
Yeah.
Even if you feel like you have a perfect marriage, you still have to have some kind of support there.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that one of the most basic things about human life, which is being a couple, there's no manual for? Like,
There's not.
isn't that crazy to me? Like, it's like the most basic part of being human, and we F it up so badly, so frequently.
Yes.
All right. Well, why don't you go ahead and tell the audience where they can find you if they're interested in working with you?
Yeah, you guys can find us at deviationbydesign.com, and there it will detail our program. And if people are interested, they could book a free 30-minute coaching session with us. And at the end of that coaching session, we do give a free 3-day mini course that individuals can go through. And at that point, if they like what they've gone through and want to schedule another call to do ongoing coaching, they are free to do that. But at the end of the 30-minute coaching session, we do give a 3-day mini course in the form of an ebook and worksheets and stuff.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, the link for that is in the description, so go check that out if you want to find more from Justin and Cresta. I have one last question for you. It is a question that I ask everybody that comes on the show, and that is, and you both get an opportunity to answer this, by the way, what is your best sexual talent?
Ooh, I would say mine is probably oral sex.
Yeah.
I think.
Mine is, I think, surprising him with things he had no idea he was going to like.
Yes.
All right.
That is a good one.
Yeah. There's been a few of those, huh?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good for you for bringing in some things to keep it spicy.
Yes.
Well, those are both great talents to have. I want to thank you both for coming on the show. And again, if you want to work with Justin and Cresta, the link is in the description. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Definitely appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that's all the time I have for this episode, and I will see you next week. We hope you liked this episode of the Love Lab podcast. If you enjoy this show, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends.
And for more free, exclusive content, join us in the Passion Vault at CelineRemy.com/vault. That's CelineRemy.com/vault.
Thanks for listening.
And remember, you're amazing.